I'm going to call this meeting to order at 10 a.m. And I'd like someone to review the agenda and move it for adoption. One notice on 5.3 will be stroked. That update will come in next month on the wild boar update. He did not say anything.
Then I will give that a motion to approve the agenda as amended, losing 5.3.
Okay, all those in favor?
No, I'm just gonna.
Oh, you got one too?
I'm just
Asking out of respect for the office here, Dave, on whether you could remove your hat unless you've got something to hide.
What?
respect for the office.
Because what?
Respect.
For the office.
Oh. No, I don't think so.
Okay,
Thank you.
ready? All in favor of James's motion on the agenda, and that is carried. Adoption of the minutes. I did look over them. I seen James Nyberg was unable to attend. He was absent at that meeting, and yet he adjourned the meeting. So I'm not quite sure how that happened. Dave usually adjourns. Was that a meeting you would have adjourned, Dave, do you think?
What's that?
Did you adjourn the ASB meeting last time?
That can be confirmed. I can.
Oh, you can check that. Okay. Oh, yeah, I guess it is all recorded.
Yeah, I thought so.
Okay. Michelle will check into that, who actually adjourned it.
Well, should we motion to move them if we don't know
Well,
for sure it needs to be amended?
If there was any other,
We could bring those minutes back to the next meeting, Mr. Chairman, I think. They don't have to be approved this meeting.
Okay.
You can approve 2 minutes.
okay. Okay, well, we can leave that. And then, but before we do move away from minutes, is there, has anyone noticed anything else that is incorrect or missing? Okay,
Well, you know, did I not phone into that meeting? I'm trying to think of that one.
I think Michelle's.
I think we can go back and check the film. Like we'll just go back to YouTube and watch it and we'll correct it from there.
So
Oh, we can do that later.
okay, well, we'll check it out just to make sure it's right. Okay,
Yeah, let's do that.
okay, that sounds good. So,
I thought I phoned in for a short period of that meeting because there was something that I wanted to discuss, but I can't remember what it was.
we'll find that out when we review the tape. Okay, perfect. And moving on to being that we have a guest with us today, we'll go through with introductions, and we'll start with Michelle, please.
Michelle Hoover, legislative assistant.
That's what I asked.
Ernie, we're doing introductions.
Okay. Ernie Gender, board member. Good morning.
Dave Grover, board member.
Justin Stevens, good morning.
Les Dulberg, chair.
James Nyberg, board member.
Quentin Beaumont, Manager of Agriculture Operations. Good morning.
Eric Kushner, Manager of IT.
Perfect. And our first delegation is with us today, Susanna Bruno from the Battle River Watershed. So welcome, Susanna, and go ahead with your presentation for us.
Thank you. So it's great to be back. I was just here a couple months ago for a council presentation. So it's great to be back to talk about drought. So we've been working a lot on the drought aspect with several municipal drought workshops that we've been running with the North Sask Watershed Alliance as well as the Red Deer River Watershed Alliance. We had one in Vigorville and one in Blackfalds. And so I guess I should say that I'm the stewardship coordinator with the Battle River Watershed Alliance. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Battle River Watershed Alliance, we're a nonprofit, non-government organization that works at water and looks at water and land management in the Battle River and Sounding Creek watersheds. That's our purview, at least in the Alberta section. And so right now we're focused on helping and talking with municipalities about drought in our watersheds. Oh, can it scroll? Oh, let's see.
You gotta lean on left leg and then bounce back to the.
Okay, got it. Oops. All right, got it. Okay, excellent. Yeah, exactly. Hold my tongue just right. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I just wanted to start with the definition of drought. I know this might be a little bit of a dry subject, but I just want to make sure we're all on the same page when we know what we're talking about when we talk about drought. So drought is a prolonged period of dry weather that depletes water resources, including natural sources, man-made storage, as well as soil moisture. And it can also be further defined by its specific impacts, whether it's meteorological, hydrological, agricultural, and socioeconomic. So, and as well as ecological. So that's the droughts that's when droughts progress to the point where they start affecting our natural systems, aside from the water. So we're talking like forests and things like that. And through this work, we are also further talking about multi-year drought. And we've been focusing on that because it's just when things can get worse, and not just get worse, but there's cumulative impacts. So the same impacts that happened the year before will happen more. And so that's kind of why we wanted to focus on multi-year drought, but also it has longer lasting impacts as well. So it can take decades or even longer to fully recover from really severe multi-year droughts. And it also impacts human health, especially with like the heat events that can come with those droughts, as well as mental health, especially for landowners, and all those factors. And then it can also, as I mentioned, affect our natural systems and natural assets and ecosystems on which we rely for water, clean water, as well as water quantity as well. So that's why we focused on multi-year drought with this work. And we also want to focus on drought resiliency. And so when we're talking about drought resiliency, it's how well a community can rebound from the effects of drought, even multi-year drought. And so really what we'd like to say is a drought resilient community not only survives a drought, but thrives during a drought. So you can have close to business as normal as much as possible in a drought versus having to severely cut back on what's available. So that's one of the focuses of this work. So I know you folks are keenly aware that we're in a stage 4 drought across the province. That was the water shortage management stage 4 is the provincial framework that they work with. And they haven't yet called the 5. They might though, of course, if it's a worse year this coming year. And I think there's also a sheet in your handout or in your folders if you want more information about that system and what it entails. And there's been low flow advisories all across the Battle River watershed. And I'll talk a little bit more about that near the end of the presentation, where there's a resource called the Rivers app. I'm not sure if you folks are familiar with that, but it's an app produced by the government of Alberta, where you can actually go and look at water flow advisories, as well as, on there it talks about what kind of licenses are impacted by that and what kind of uses are impacted of tributaries as well as main stem of the watershed. So to create a little bit of a background, here's an example of, this is the flow of the Battle River on the top and the Red Deer River on the bottom. So in red is from 2023, the flow of the rivers, and compared to 2001 and 2021. So 2001 and 2021. So just so you can get a picture of how, and those were all very low flow years. And so just to see the comparison, which is quite significant. And these are some maps from Ralph White, who's with the government of Alberta, and these maps are available through his moisture situation updates, which is what that QR code is for. You can go, he puts one out every, once every month or so. So you can go there and look for the latest one, but these are some of the latest ones that he put out. So the one on the left is a snowpack, and not surprisingly, at least up until a couple of days ago, it was very, very low, very much below normal. And the one on the right is the cold season precipitation. So that was at the end of last year. So a little bit further back, but still not surprising that we're in a very low, below normal situation going into the winter and into the spring. Although this snow will definitely help.
That's interesting that you look at this, but the pink is dry. Is that what they're saying? Or is
The
that,
pink is like the dry, is like,
but that was not where the drought was. It's almost, it's an almost 100% flip of that, right? Because all those counties up there, they were in some cases had too much moisture. But yet, so snowpack, they talk about snowpack, but I'm wondering, it makes me wonder how that correlates. It'd be interesting to know further on back more years.
and there is, we weren't able to get, Ralph White was at our presentation in Blackfalds, and he had a good kind of longitudinal look at those kinds of things. We weren't able to get the slides from from the other WPAC for this meeting, but you could definitely connect with him. I think he actually spoke at Lacombe County a couple of years ago. So if you were interested, he could come and give a talk to ASB or to the council about this, about his work and kind of that more longitudinal look at things.
Go ahead. I just know from going by feed and stuff, like up by Lamont County Drive, there were ruts in their fields, 2 feet deep.
Yeah.
So there's something.
Yeah, it's not correlating. Is it?
Something's not right.
Yeah.
Although the map is just late, it's like November to January.
Yeah.
So they just haven't got snow. I mean, they went in wet. They got soil moisture. They just didn't get snow. Snow's been light right across the province. It pretty much looks like, except maybe in the mountains.
I would agree,
More.
because you could see the ruts in the field still.
Yeah.
We had snow.
That's right, yeah.
So in your packages, I gave you all a copy of the drought guide that we've been working with and that we produced with the Alberta Water Council, and you'll be getting a presentation from Andre after me. And so this document outlines the goals and main actions that can be taken to respond to, recover from, and build resilience to drought. And these are all the themes that are covered in the document. And all of these ideally should be integrated into whatever kind of drought management plan that the county wants to create, but there's also, and then also integrated into other plans that you have. And I'll explain that a little bit further. So just thinking about drought planning, so there's kind of 2 pieces to drought planning. So there's drought adaptation, which refers to the proactive actions, policies, and programs, tools, and strategies intended to reduce the negative impacts of drought. So the purpose is not to eliminate all negative impacts, but to lessen the severity and adapt to create a better system. In other words, to become a resilient community. That's the forward-thinking, change how we do things kind of actions that we could do now, or ideally before a drought, to lessen the severity of the drought and become a more resilient community. This is an example from, I know it's from Calgary, but just look at if you look at what the values say in the, on the bigger side there, it talks about elements to include in drought resilience, what kind of things to consider. And so that's why I included it. I know it's a city, but it's just the element of what's included, I think is applicable across the board, and you can see where that might apply to you. And in addition to adaptation, you have your mitigation, or this is kind of like your drought response plan. So what do you do when drought hits, right? And that's what, so these are the interventions necessary to reduce the severity and magnitude of the drought event that you're currently in. While adaptation is essential to reduce the damages from drought that can't be avoided. So both adaptation and mitigation plans are essential, or at least pieces of those are essential for any drought management plan. And so drought management planning actually influences all these other aspects of municipal planning. So, so they should be either incorporated or, yeah, they can be incorporated into those plans specifically, but also have your overall drought management plan. This document is also included in your folder there. So this is the Alberta Wetland Policy, or Landowner Guide to the Alberta Wetland Policy. And really when looking at, especially for ag service boards, you really, I think one of the primary ways, I mean, that you can address things is by looking at land use planning. And so looking at land use bylaws and other mechanisms on setbacks from riparian areas, so that could also be, so that could be setting certain distances, and so the ways that we can protect the riparian areas and the wetlands, also keeping trees and shelter belts on the landscape as much as possible, and encouraging people to do so. There are programs out there that can help. If you folks, do you guys have a tree planting program in this county?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. That's perfect. So that's a good opportunity, and to promote that, and then looking at other beneficial management practices to protect riparian areas and wetlands, and even some of the uplands around wetlands. And also to incorporate where you can or where you're able to low impact development or natural infrastructure. So natural infrastructure is kind of like using natural systems, but to our advantage. So if you're having issues with flooding, or you find a problematic spot that is consistently problematic with flooding or damaging your grid road, your county roads, you can think about where you can strategically maybe even build or augment an existing wetland to hold back the water from those areas. So you're helping nature help you, basically, is what natural infrastructure is about. And there's some really good examples. I was just at a natural infrastructure conference, and I know Parkland County has been doing some of this kind of work in their area. So if you're interested in that kind of work, they'd be a good county to look at. And so they're, oh, sorry, let's move on. So this is a report that we put out a couple years ago, I believe. And we did an analysis using GIS and satellite imagery of riparian areas within the Battle River watershed. And now we've actually completed the Sounding Creek watershed as well. And we have produced these summary reports. I believe everyone has a copy of these in your folder as well. So you can, I'm only going to show you a few maps just to highlight some of the information that's in here. But what we were looking at was riparian intactness, catchment pressure, and as well the prioritization planning, conservation and restoration areas or efforts where you could focus your efforts. And so within the document, this is one of the key maps we have. as the riparian intactness. And so intactness means the extent to which natural riparian habitat has been altered by human activity. So high intactness means that it's dominated by natural vegetation and is not highly disturbed. And very low intactness means it's dominated by human-built structures or disturbed vegetation. So on this map, you can see that on the bottom, that so the red is very low intactness, and then you progress up to green, which is highly intact. So you've actually got almost equal amounts of those parcels, which is good. And then you can see the in-between structures. So there's some that are low intactness, and then some that are moderate intactness. And so with these, we have kind of highlighted areas for prioritization for conservation or restoration efforts. So in the dark brown, this is conservation prioritized, high prioritization, which means the intactness is low. Intactness is high, and landscape pressure is low. So this would be good riparian habitat to keep or try and protect in some way. And then for restoration efforts, prioritized, the green was conservation prioritized. I apologize for that. So dark brown is the restoration prioritized, and intactness is low, and landscape pressure is high. So that's where restoration should be or could be targeted to in terms of riparian restoration, planting more trees, perhaps encouraging landowners if they have cattle operations to maybe look at off-site watering systems, those kinds of things. So all that information is in that report that's in your folder. There's also more information in there as well that can help with prioritizing where to look at riparian health and riparian areas. This work is also available on the riparian web portal through, it was developed through the North Sask Watershed Alliance as well as the Battle River Watershed Alliance. I'm not sure if anyone there's periodic workshops, online workshops to learn how to navigate and use this portal. So I'm not sure, Quentin, have you done that workshop at all? No?
Not yet.
No, that's fine. Yeah, so they're offered periodically to look at those things. So you can actually look at, you can zoom in on a specific area, as well as you can also update the map with restoration projects. Like you can make actually like a note that what kind of restoration progress has been made in that area. Because this isn't necessarily a live map, like it's not being constantly updated, because that's way too much data for us to manage. But if we can find out when projects have actually been initiated and done on certain reaches, that'd be great information to have. Okay, and so next, I know this might be a little bit of a touchy subject for some people, but thinking about working with beavers, beavers are either you love them or you hate them, I think. But they do some great work in terms of keeping the landscape green, keeping water on the landscape, especially in times of drought, which is where we are, especially right now. So they help, but they also help mitigate the impacts of flood as well, because beaver dams slow water, let it seep into the groundwater, and they also just store it for releasing it during the dry times of the year, even during the frozen times of the year, and during hot times and dry times like drought. So I know that they are not always the easiest critters to work with, but there have been measures to help people to work with them. So on the top there, on the left is like an example of a pond leveler device that there's several different models you can look at using. This one is from County of Vermilion River, but there's several around. There's some in Beaver County as well.
What's the idea behind that? You said pond leveler.
Pond leveler. So it actually helps keep the pond from getting too high. So you can actually put so you can keep the pond, but if you're worried about like a road, you don't want the road to get flooded, then the pipes will actually let water through, and there's a grate around them so that the beavers can't actually, plug up the pipes so that water can still go through when it gets to a certain height, when the water gets to a certain height. So you can keep the beavers, you can keep the water.
You must have lazy beavers.
I can ask the question for that. I think I've heard of this, and then the beavers just went and clogged the whole thing up, and that stopped it anyhow. But they're busy little beavers. That's what they call them.
Yes.
The last beaver I seen in my area was back in the canteen, and he was moving out of there because all the projects that Ducks Unlimited made, they're going dry, nothing in them, and now even Ducks Unlimited is digging dugouts in the sloughs, which are not supposed to be doing.
Yeah, I didn't know that. Interesting. But maybe they have a license to do that. But that brings up another point. So the bottom picture is if you don't have beavers, or you don't really want beavers, but you want the type of benefits that beavers bring, so like a pond, you can actually install they're called beaver dam analogs. And so basically it's like building a beaver dam, but without the beavers. So people will build the beaver dam or the dam. It's just this dam made of sticks and mud, just like the beavers would do. But I mean, beavers know how to do it. They've been doing it for centuries. So, but there are people who are doing this as a way to bring back water to really dry areas, especially where there might not even be trees to support beavers right now. Like in this picture here, there are no trees around there, and there's some spruce trees which beavers don't like. So, so this is an option for if you're in a grassy area where there's not a lot of trees, or you want to try and get, like I said, get the benefits of a beaver without a beaver, you can do this. So
Is that beavers with all pine, spruce, coniferous trees?
they are definitely not their choice.
Really?
Yeah, they
All
will.
these years, you haven't told me that.
They're definitely not their top choice. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. they might if they're desperate, but it's just because I think it has to do with the sap in it. It's just they don't like it, and it could be part of the bark too. They don't like that. Yeah.
They actually eat the bark off the poplar trees, aspen trees, willows, and they won't eat the bark off the
Yeah.
fruit trees.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, that's another way you could, if you want to discourage beavers, you could plant spruce trees and such around, but, and then build yourself a beaver dam analog. And I think, Cows and Fish and the Mistakis Institute, they've been working on this kind of institute called the Working with Beavers Institute. And so you can actually there's actually a website called Working with Beavers. And you can go to their website, and they have information about pond levelers. They have information about these beaver dam analogs, and so you can find actually information on how you can work with beavers. And this is actually a recent document that I put a picture here about the Alberta Beaver Beneficial Management Practices. So it has also like a decision-making tool in there, and it actually gives like a whole background on of all the bits and pieces of all the different tools that are out there. So it's actually a really good document. I was actually on a webinar about it a couple weeks ago. So beavers are not all bad, but if you don't want them around, you can create your own little dam if you need to. And I think that actually that Mistakis and Cows and Fish actually have training to make the beaver dam analogs, and I know there are others. Like at the conference I was at last week, the Blood Tribe down in southern Alberta, they're doing this on a lot of their creeks, like as many as they can. So the information is definitely there, and somebody, if you go to the Working with Beavers website, I'm sure someone can help point you in the right direction if you're interested in that. And there's also different designs of the pond levelers. Glynis Hood out of the Augustana campus in Camrose, she's been working and trying to get these pond levelers out on the landscape. She worked a lot with Beaver County, I know, ironically, or maybe not ironically, maybe on purpose. And so she's been doing this, but there are a few different variations on pond levelers as well. So I can link into that. So moving forward on the topic of drought, back in 2013, actually, the BRWA created as part of our watershed management plan, a section on drought adaptation and management. So there's a big, huge background research report, which I don't expect you to read, but we do have the implementation guidelines, and they are available on our website. You may see the 2013 notice on there, but really, some of this stuff doesn't go out of date. And we are looking to update it as well. But there is some good advice in there. And if you have any other questions about those documents, I was involved in writing those documents, so I can talk to you about those too if you're interested. So when I mentioned about encouraging landowners to work on good management practices in terms of riparian areas and wetlands, and we currently have some money from the WRRP grant from the provincial government that we are using, and we can use it across the watershed, so it's not area specific. And so this funding is a cost share program, but really we cover 75% of project costs. So it'd just be up to the landowner to cover the other costs. And I mean, project costs can include renting a backhoe or whatever. I know a lot of them have those, but I mean, if they need to, that's part of the project costs. So that can be included in the project costs. But usually if it's like a fencing program or fencing project, then it would kind of be expected that the landowner would do the fencing, or he would have friends who could help him with the fencing but we could pay for the actual materials of the program that he's using, or for the project that he's doing. And as well as like offsite watering systems, tree planting or shrub planting in the riparian areas. And that includes around water courses or around wetlands. So riparian areas are around both of those. So both are applicable, as well as we'll also pay for riparian health assessments. So cows and fish would come in and do the health assessment. So it just kind of looks at the state of the health of their section or around their wetland, and then we can go from there about what we need to do to improve it. So that's the purpose of those health assessments. And for this funding, it does need to be within the Battle River watershed or Sounding Creek boundary. But besides that, it's can be anywhere. So if you're anyone you know might be interested, we can definitely help them. This is going to be going on for at least another year or so. So we can get them signed up for this program. And we usually do have some funding of some sort to work on projects like this. Mm-hmm.
What is that was one of my questions. What's your yearly funding for the repairing your water, getting them cows away from water or stuff like that? What's your total one that you've had over the last 3 years? How many dollars do you have to?
I think we have around 90,000 to spend.
90,000 a year?
For the entire project. So it's a 2-year project. We're kind of coming to the end of the first year, and then we got another year ahead that we can work on this. Maybe a little bit longer. So 90,000 for the whole project.
For all the projects.
Yeah, well, that's how much money we got
Okay.
to spend.
Your share is, and then the farmer, that's 25%.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So,
So is this first come, first served? Because I would hate like to see, okay, one person come in and get everything on.
So I guess technically it is first come, first serve, I guess, but it is, yeah, I don't think there's a project dollar cap on it, but usually it's, I mean, at least for the years that we've been doing these projects, we haven't had like huge projects. Usually it's like a watering system and some tree planting. And it doesn't usually break the bank on us. So we've usually had to work to spend money at the end of the projects. So we haven't had the problem of running out of money, but it is, I guess, technically a first come, first serve, but.
That's in years past, like we're getting more of a tight schedule in here. Someone could come in and darn near claim everything.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. That's a good point. We should maybe look at that. Maybe we should put something in our policies about maybe putting a cap on how much. Well, that's something to consider. I'll take that back and we can talk about that. That's a good point. I don't think there is, but that maybe we should look into that. That's a good point. Yeah. And I guess just I'm sure you folks are probably aware of some of these other resources. So the Rivers app is there. That I mentioned that earlier when talking about the low flow advisories. So you can just find that, just Google Alberta Rivers app and it should come up. You can also download it onto your phone as well. And there is also, I think there's also I think a YouTube video that one of the scientists from the GOA who developed it explains it a little bit better. But there's also a handout in your folder there about it as well. And then there's the ALICE program. I know Settler isn't part of an ALICE program, but it's a great program, and we like to promote it as much as we can. And we also have a environmental public health network, information network website there. The groundwater observation well network, which is important because right now it's not impacting our groundwater quite yet, but as long as the longer the duration of the drought, the more you'll see the impact on groundwater resources, especially if since we've lost so many wetlands in our area as well. And the government of Alberta also has a drought website that they've put up. And you're probably aware that they also formed the Drought Secretariat as well. So they've got a lot of information coming out. So check their websites. I'm sure you're aware. And as well as there's a Sustainable Cap Water Program. And I also included that Beaver Beneficial Management Practices document here, but you can just Google that and it should come up. And then of course, then we also have another information sheet there about water diversion for agricultural uses during low flow. So that's all I have for you today. And but I'm here for questions.
Okay. I got, Mr. Chairman, if I could, one question. So now if we go to the stage 5 of the drought, what does that do for you guys? Do you guys have much of a impact on what you guys are doing, or how does that affect you guys?
We
don't know.
We don't, because we don't have a lot of impact because we are we're non-regulatory, so we can't force you guys or anybody to do anything when it comes to water. I suspect if it comes to that, because they're in the south, I'm sure you've heard they're talking about the water sharing agreements and such that they're talking about. We would probably take a bit of a role if we had to facilitate some of those water sharing agreements. We've in the past, I think it was in the 2001 drought. That was before I started at the watershed group, but they had actually been talking a bit about with the big cities, like with Camrose, Wetaskiwin, Wainwright, and ATCO, that was ATCO at that time, the coal-fired generating plant, because the ATCO plant had the senior water license. So technically they could call priority and keep the water. I mean, they probably wouldn't do that, but they could, because that they're legally allowed to do that with their water license. And so but they were actually thinking about starting to talk about those water sharing agreements. We didn't get to that point, but if it gets to that point and we are called to even here to start those water sharing agreements, we would probably play a role in that. Least convening people, just making sure everybody kind of could come together and talk about it, as well as guided by the government of Alberta, of course. I mean, that's their wheelhouse per se, but it doesn't impact us, but we want to support municipalities and our communities as much as possible in those times. So we want to be a place where you can come and find resources. If you don't know who to talk to about things, if you want research about things, we can help with those kinds of that kind of aspect of it. So that's kind of what how our role would shift with a stage 5.
Larry has a question, but I'm going to go to Andrew first because I see he has his hand up. Andrew?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to note on the water sharing agreements that, of course, we do divert from the Red Deer River, and they are part of the South Saskatchewan River where we've got those water sharing agreements happening.
Yeah.
So we are part of that, and as Suzanne said, similarly, the watershed alliances and the Red Deer River Municipal Users Group, for example, are part of those conversations.
That's right. Yeah.
Larry?
Okay, the question I have is, like we talk about the Battle River watershed, and in my area, I've, over the last few years, have received several complaints about large CFOs sucking out of non-flowing creeks.
Mm-hmm.
Springs that we don't have runoff, actually creeks flowing backwards. The point where you could almost have a range where, because other farmers and ranchers are watering cattle out of them, and then also like just standing water, like some of the little lakes and stuff, pumping water out of that. So, you come and talk to us, but there's got to be an advocacy to the other government regulators, such as Alberta Environment, that this can't happen. And we've had creeks where big corporate farms come in and clear every workable acre of land and actually push the trees into the creek. And you get no response from Alberta Environment when you phone them on it. And that's as adjacent landowners and we've asked the questions from the municipality, but it's you guys are trying to do a real good job, and yet things are being allowed to happen the total opposite way.
I agree. And I have been told by some of the government officials, like especially when talking about wetlands, and it would apply to creeks as well, that things like that, especially in rural Alberta, they're all complaint driven. So if you call the environment hotline, then something might get done. But that's
if you had somebody camping out west on the Alberta Environment Hotline, they'd do something on the weekend that happened. I phoned every number I could find because this one landowner I thought there was going to be a war up there.
Yeah.
And finally, the outfit that was doing it had taken enough heat. It was a commercial outfit pumping it and just pulled out.
Yeah. And I guess on the side of like clearing land, I mean, that is a role that the county could take, is in terms of making stricter rules about land clearing, because you can set how much of land. I mean, it's hard to do, I know, in an agricultural setting. I understand, but you can also but if there are important areas, especially around a creek, you can set setbacks in that. I think that's part of there is municipal power to do that. So
who you give that power to, because the next people that sit here can say you cannot have trees on it. That power is very careful to be wielded. Very careful. Absolutely,
you're absolutely right. And we've also us in the watershed realm have talked about that. We have a wetland policy, but we need maybe something around riparian areas as well, like some sort of policy framework to work with. Because it's great if the wetland is protected, but what about all the brush around it? What about creeks and such like that? And you're right.
These all flow to the Battle River.
Yes, absolutely.
the last few years, they haven't had a chance really to flow very much because every bit of them is being sucked up. And that one creek where I'm talking about the trees being pushed in, it doesn't have near the water. The water's not caught in bush. It hardly flows whatsoever now.
Mm,
Disgusting.
it is. That's unfortunate. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and like I said, unfortunately, it is largely complaint driven. There might be, because technically they're probably violating the Water Act by sucking up that much water. Thank you. Yeah.
Typically, if you phone though, by the time you get an answer, they're gone.
Sadly.
Yeah.
A 6-inch diesel pump can move a fair bit of water in a couple days.
Okay, are there any further questions for Susanna? David?
Yeah, I got one. When you're making your presentation the next time or the next outfit, whether it be cameras or whatever, Alice only operates in 2 areas, Red Deer County, and I can't remember the other one, but they don't, I talked to them in quite length at a conference that we had. And a friend of mine actually works for them, and they have no projects in the county of Stellar, apparently.
Yeah, you're right.
And they can't handle hardly what they got in the 2 counties that they do. So I wouldn't send them there, maybe to somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I think as a municipality, if we signed on, that would give them the extra, like Alice would, that's how that works. It's
Sort of is that way, but they said they really don't have the funding to do any more than what they're doing right now. And I had them look at ours one time and they wanted to tie up 31 acres and have me fence it and have no cows in it. And I thought, I'm already managing it better than that, so I don't. No, the Alice thing, I just was wondering, because right now they don't operate in county stuff.
Yeah, that's right. They don't. But I guess it was more just to encourage the county to maybe look at the Alice program.
Me because of money mostly.
Yeah. Well, every county is different in what they want to look at. I know, and there's some counties that kind of share Alice people, like Wetaskiwin and Leduc kind of are together on it. Red Deer County and Lacombe County kind of share one.
Red Deer and Lacombe, that's about.
And then there's one actually, Vermilion River actually kind of runs a program in Flagstaff County as well. So there can be kind of that sharing if you want to find a partner, or even maybe with Lacombe County, who knows? So those partnerships can actually be made. I actually now sit on the PAC with for the Alice group in Wetaskiwin and Leduc. So yep, it's a good partnership. So, but yeah, it's just to encourage counties to look at that program. Really, that's why we have it in there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, there's no further questions. Thank you very much, Susanna, for coming in today. You shared some great information.
Yeah, and let me know if you have any other questions about this, or yeah. I'm willing to.
Definitely will. Yeah.
It was there on the presentation, and Quentin has it as well. So.
Great. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And now is Andre is ready to present as well. He's online, I see. Okay. Guess we might as well go to Andre. Good morning, Andre.
Good morning, folks. How are we doing today?
Yeah, we're doing well. I'm going to do a quick round of introductions so you know who you're speaking with, and we'll start with Joe, please.
My name is Joe McCulloch. I'm the Director of Operations for the County of Stellar.
Michelle Hoover, Legislative Assistant.
Ernie Gender, Board Member, good morning.
Larry Clark, good morning.
Dave Over, Board Member.
Justin Stevens, good morning.
Les Stuhlberg, Board Chair. Good morning.
James Nyberg, Board Member.
Quentin Beaumont, Manager of Agriculture Operations. Good morning.
Eric Kushner, Manager of IT.
Okay. Go ahead with your presentation, Andre.
Great. Well, thank you very much, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it in person, but if I can either have someone post my presentation or allow me to be the host so I can take care of my own slides.
You can try sharing your screen now.
I am now, yes. Let's see if this has gone the way it should. Is that okay? Can you guys see that okay?
Yep.
There we go. Yeah, pleasure to be here with the Alberta Water Council. I've been working with the Alberta Water Council since 2010, and so have been around the water game for a little bit. Was not surprised to hear some of the earlier conversation following Susanna's presentation around the frustration with the lack of enforcement and some options of what you can do about it. So that's been around for a long time. And so I just wanted to touch on that and talk a little bit about how the Alberta wetland policy, right, is supposed to protect some of those water bodies that are on the land, but again, very difficult to get anybody to enforce. But I suspect you guys are collectively right that it is complaint driven, and if somebody gets enough heat, eventually something gets done. But there you go. My intent today is to tell you a little bit about the Alberta Water Council as an organization, and then we can talk a little bit about the current drought, some of the actions that are underway. And then I was going to talk about two recent projects, one of which you would have heard quite a bit from Susanna already on this drought guide. And then I'll tell you about our drought simulation project, which is actually being publicly released today. So the Alberta Water Council, for those of you who aren't aware, we came out of the Water for Life strategy. That's the provincial leading water management strategy for Alberta. We started as a not-for-profit in 2007. We were a ministers committee for a few years before, and then folks decided the not-for-profit route was more appropriate for this group and what it needed to do. So we are the provincial scale collaborative partnership with 23 different members. And so that includes all the major water using sectors across the province, in industry, municipalities, the government of Alberta, other levels of government, such as yourselves, and also the NGOs have interests around the table. And so we bring everyone together to advance the goals of the Water for Life strategy. We try to provide strategic advice that informs policy or actions to our members, which includes the government of Alberta and other groups that we work with. And we also are at the table to bring everyone together so that we can have that forum to discuss various perspectives around the table or whatever the hot topic of the day is. As we know, drought is very hot right now. We were engaged, we were the first group that the government of Alberta engaged in terms of like a multi-sector organization to start talking about the drought in October of 2023. So a good starting point for those discussions, and I'm sure that you guys have heard about what's going on with some of the drought. We'll cover that as well. So where are we now? Susanna probably covered some of this. I caught the last half of her presentation. But we've been working on drought at the Water Council since 2018 in earnest, and I've really pulled together some good information in our report. So not only the report that Susanna covered with you, but also this drought simulation one has a lit review in it as well. And we found that drought's going to have really devastating impacts. So not only to the farming communities, as I'm sure you guys are familiar with, but other economic aspects of it, the social aspects of it, and the environmental aspects of it that can be difficult to recover from. So our guide has that background. There's also a video that we put together, just a short little maybe a 5-minute video. Sometimes it's easier to get people to watch a YouTube than it is to pick up a report. So we put that together. That's on the webpage that will be available on this slide deck. And of course, these slides are available to you. There's a number of websites and opportunities for further research that I'm happy to share if you guys would like to see. So we know we're in stage 4 of the water shortage management scale for Alberta. And we can talk a little bit about that in the next coming slides. We got heard earlier today, the 51 water shortage advisories that we had across Alberta this year is likely to happen again in 2023, but in 24, it's likely to be at least that bad again. We had 12 agricultural disasters declared, including special areas 2, 3, and 4, and including your own county of Stantler. The bottom 3 points are just sort of relative information to share. I give this presentation a lot. So the bow and the elbows that flow into Calgary were as low as the early 2000s drought. And that stands as the one in all of the meetings that I go to. Everyone's been talking about that major drought in 2000, 2001. And while certainly there have been other droughts, this one will set the new bar for how bad drought is in recent memory coming up, unless we get a surprising result in terms of precipitation going forward. We also had regular active heat warnings. I think that a lot of that was brought on by the El Nino, and that situation expected to not be so bad in the coming year, but of course you never know. And then apportionment, which is the amount of water that gets through to Saskatchewan, and so we're required to do so. That's usually a concern for the South and often depends on the Red Deer River to meet that apportionment need. And I was just in another meeting earlier before I came into this one that talked about apportionment and the approach that government will take to try to make sure that they meet that apportionment need. So I heard you talking a little bit about stage 5 and what happens if they declare an emergency. And I've got something on a slide afterwards, but just to sort of lay out what these steps are. And again, this is more information for you folks just to have it in hand. That gives out some of the descriptors of the difference between how you move from stage 4 to stage 5, and when it's considered, and then what the path forward is. So I love maps, and the government of Alberta has been doing a great job putting out a number of maps. This one is from the Alberta Rivers Basin that I know Suzanne mentioned earlier as well. There's Stettler, the little red dot sort of in the middle. And so about half your county was under water shortage advisories, I believe. And then if you haven't seen, and I know some of these maps were shown in Susanna's presentation as well, but if you haven't had a chance to go look at the Alberta Climate Information Service, it is an absolutely fantastic resource with all kinds of different maps, from everything from precipitation accumulations or soil moisture, and runs on 365-day averages all the way up to 30-day running averages. It really gets you a ton of information that can be useful for you and your county and all the people that you're working with. So this map that I picked, just one of many, just shows your 365-day precipitation accumulation percent of average. So this is how much of, compared to average was your precipitation of the last year, and you folks are looking at about sort of 50 to 70% so far this year, and so that changes obviously month to month even, but just a fun map to pull out. And then I pulled this other one that had to do with the same accumulations, but relative to the long-term normal. And so here we have, your county is about half of it is, it looks to be about either extremely dry or 150 dry. Pardon me?
I was saying to one of the guys, right about there is your house at the very dark pink part. So
you can probably tell too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's notable. And then so it will be very interesting to see what comes over the next couple of months here, as that will determine a lot of the status of what happens next. So and then I pulled this one for fun. This is the probability of returning to normal spring for spring wheat soil moisture conditions. And then so you guys are looking at about 10 to 30% likely of being normal on May 1st. So pretty low. So again, it would take a pretty significant precipitation event, weather to, and one that doesn't come too fast, to sort of get things back to normal. So in talking with Quentin about this, I was sort of asking if I could just come in and talk a bit about what's happening to help get everybody up to speed if they're not already up to speed on this, or if I can just introduce some topics, because I am involved in quite a few of these groups and activities that are underway, or at least I know a bit of information that I might be able to share with you folks if there's anything in particular. So I mentioned that Water Council has been working on this since 2018. So yes, we developed the guide, which is a fantastic resource, I think, and then that simulation. So I'll get into those later. I won't dig into that right now. But following that meeting that we had with Environment Protected Areas in October, they asked us to strike a committee to provide a sounding board in case they needed to come test something with us, or basically just provide that forum for discussion. And so we have struck that committee. I believe we have representation from RMA, and I think Team Alberta Crops is also there in terms of who's representing on the ag side that's not irrigation. And so that would be one source of information. Although to date we've only met once, and GOE really seems to be focusing on the large licensees and getting these water sharing agreements underway, which is probably where they should be focusing. So that's good. And then we just had an update from them last week on Thursday at our board meeting. So GOE is, in my opinion, through their drought command team, doing a pretty good job of communicating a lot of what the plans are. as I'm sure Susanna would have mentioned, that the big part with drought planning is you have to plan in advance, right? If you start doing when you're in the middle of it, you're not up a creek. I wish I had a better metaphor. Sorry, folks, I've been kind of sick for the last 2 days, so my brain's not firing. All my jokes aren't landing, I'm sure. But so GOA is doing a lot of modeling in terms of depending on the situation, getting the best up-to-date information they can. The reality is they can't do it in real time. And there's always a bit of a delay in terms of how much time it takes for water to flow from one metering station to another. But they're working with the licensees, large licensees in particular, and they have been for months to get ahead of this drought and expected drought. And so, I think last week or the week, recently, the Minister's Advisory Group was also announced, and then so that's a sounding board for the Minister of, so the Minister's choice of reps from municipal, both urban and rural. I know both the people who were on that, Paul McLaughlin and Tanya Thorne, very, very much knowledgeable about the water situation and would be great contributors, I'm sure. Also, First Nations, Industry Irrigation, and the MLA for Madison Hat is on that group. And then, just like you received earlier from Susanna, the WPACs are out there looking to support municipalities to develop drought response plans, raising awareness, bringing people together. And that was one of the outcomes of that guide that we developed. It was for the WPACs, and so they've been engaging. I hear there are very well attended workshops happening throughout the province. I attended one in Black Falls, and it was really good to see so many municipal councillors coming out, using the guide, learning about it, sharing stories about what they're going through. So if you haven't had a chance to participate in that, I'd encourage you to try and get there. I thought I'd pull together a slide that says, what if the worst case scenario happens? And essentially that would be that either we, if we have to declare stage 5 Water Act emergency, that's when the provincial government basically takes over. They start making decisions. So what has probably already happened is that based on some of the flows and some of the modeling they're doing, is the government would essentially look at the whole list of people who have allocations, and there's a cutoff line. And it might move around a little bit, but generally it's about everyone below that line would not get water. And that's just because our allocation system is based on first in time and first in right. And so it's not ideal. I think it's an antiquated system, but no one wants to touch it in terms of trying to redo it. And so that's why they're going down the path of water sharing agreements. One notable point on this approach is that allocating water is not determined by the value of the use of the water, right? If your allocation is high on the priority list, doesn't matter if you're a municipality and you've got a drinking water license that is, relatively low priority. And so if the worst case happens, that could be one approach. And it sounds like a really bad idea, frankly. But the other option is the water sharing agreements. And I heard Susanna mentioned it, and you guys talked about it a bit before I came on. So the background is that the water sharing agreements, they are enabled by the Water Act. So it can be a formal binding agreement to share water between licenses. There are conditions as to how you do that in terms of diversion points and timing of return flows and all that fun stuff, because they have to manage an incredibly complex system with 25,000 water licenses, maybe less in the south, well, probably less in the south, but it's complicated. It was only used once, and it was in the Old Man watershed in 2001. And essentially there was a call on priority. And that means that the government basically says, this is coming and you're not going to get your water. And it was every license issued after 1950 was potentially going to be cut off. And that's only on the Old Man Basin, but still, every license after 1950 would have been restricted from taking their water. So it was the irrigation districts who started up the process of developing a water sharing agreement, which they did. And then it was, I believe, shortly after that, that they put out a declaration that essentially said, even though they have the oldest water licenses, people and cattle will get water first if it's needed before crops will. And that's out of their licenses. And I'm sure that's in part because they know they've got a giant target on their back in terms of water management. They have all the biggest and oldest licenses in Alberta. And so, I remember being in a conversation. I was at the irrigation conference last weekend, and someone told me, it's one thing to lose a bit of money in your crop, but you have to go to church with these people. And so it makes it easy in terms of the human element of looking to share water. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that in our drought simulation project as well. But essentially in fall 2023, GOA started engaging large license holders and stakeholders. And then in February 1st, they announced they want to start negotiations with the major water users. I think I heard one of your members mention that you are part of this process as withdrawals from the Red Deer River or part of the Red Deer River MUG. So yeah, February 16th was the first meeting. I attended remotely, but not the workshop part of this in the afternoon where they actually started talking, negotiating. The next one's on Friday. And the idea is to get at least close to something final by March 13th. And I don't know what it's going to land on, and that's all very hush-hush and can't talk about it. But yeah, so that's just sort of where that comes from. The idea is that, well, I'll talk about that when I get to my projects here. So I won't go through the guide. Susanna probably did a very good job of explaining it all. I didn't catch the early part of it, but I'm happy to come back to it if you guys have any questions on it as well. Project team membership, right? We had a good cross section of folks. That slide needs to be updated, but there you go. That's the people that were on at the time. Again, this is all just good information for you guys to have if you need it later. Available on our website. But now I'll shift into the second project, which has to do with hosting a simulation, which is very conveniently timed to be released because the project we did is essentially simulating something that's happening right now. And we did it in June 2022.
Andre, can I stop you just for a second?
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you give me the Coles notes of who the Alberta Water Council is made up of? I'm not familiar enough with you guys, and it would make more sense and put it in a little bit more context for me when you're talking about these projects.
Sure. Let me just, I'm going to pull up my...
I just saw that you had the city of Edmonton and stuff in there, and I just wondered where you were at, Calgary.
Sure. So we have representation from all the industry side. On the municipality side, our board is set up so that we have a seat for RMA and we have a seat for Alberta municipalities, but we also have a separate seat for City of Edmonton and Calgary because they do have sort of special, well, they have different water management challenges than other municipalities do. So I'll just flip down to this government one here. So we have a large urban sector for City of Edmonton and Calgary. So Nancy Mackay with City of Calgary is there. She's also our VP, one of the VPs. And then Cindy Chappelle, who's with EPCOR. And so anyone who's, and so obviously EPCOR has taken over, well, it's a company owned by the City of Edmonton to manage its water management assets. So EPCOR is the right group for them to be there. We've got Bill Chapman, who's a relatively new member representing Alberta municipalities. And then Amber Link.
Is Bill from Coaldale?
Bill is from Coaldale, yeah. Yeah, and then so we've got, and then just to flip through here for on the government of Alberta and provincial authorities, we've got agriculture and irrigation, and then environment protected areas, health is there, and then we've got Alberta Innovates from the science and research branch of things.
So are you an NGO or where? I'm sorry I don't understand the setup of the Alberta Water. Are you a direct of the province?
So we are a not-for-profit society. So we started off first off as a ministers committee in 2004, and then it was decided that the members of the Water Council, like, so all these organizations are members, right? So we've got, so for industry, Canadian Fuels and Chemistry Industry Association of Canada, they split a seat for chemical, petrochemical. The irrigation districts are there, they have a seat at the board. Team Alberta Crops is a seat at the board and so forth. Oil and gas is there. So all the major water users and all the major sectors of the economy, except for maybe like tourism and recreation, are sitting around our board. And so we're the provincial scale body that, and government sits there with us, right? So that's what's kind of unique about the Water Council is that government's at the table. So when we put out these reports that have recommendations or findings in them, they have the government support, which is quite different than a group that might just advocate. So I think of Pembina, perhaps, as a group that would just advocate for particular changes to whether it be the energy market or how they're managing the environment. And of course, some of these groups are also advocates in their own rights, right? So like Ducks Unlimited does a ton of great work. They're there, right? So we've got a number of other environmental groups that represent a larger sector of the environmental society. So the Alberta Environmental Network is a group that has about 140 members. So they picked 3 of them from amongst themselves and they sit on our board. So we've got the Environmental Law Centre and the Water Conservation Trust of Canada, as well as this smaller sort of watershed level group.
No, that's good. Thank you. That gives me a general idea. Now I understand when you're talking about going forward with these projects, what the deal is behind it. Thank you.
Yeah, great. No problem. Thanks for jumping in. Rather have that than just going in one ear and out the other. So I will find my presentation again. So like I said, we simulated a drought, and the idea was to test, well, not test, but inform environment or protected areas drought and water shortage plan that they're working on. And so they've been working on this for a little while, and after coming out of our last drought project where we developed the guide, they said, hey, it would be great if you could bring everyone together and let's test it, right? Like let's test the drought response amongst water managers and stakeholders within the South Saskatchewan River Basin. So we know that's the area that's the most likely to face water management challenges when it comes to drought and also flood, which you've seen. But the idea was to assess the current vulnerabilities within the watershed and then identify some gaps in the current drought mitigation actions, and including legislation and policies, because some of these things get quite out of date, and then identify procedures to mitigate and address current gaps within the SSRB, and then identify lines of communications between stakeholders. So it was a really interesting exercise to be in the room for, where it was run by WaterSmart, and they pulled together the and so here's all the people that participated. So some of these folks are not on our board, but our approach is if we think people should be in the room for a particular project, we invite them. And so some of these would be covered off by some of our other members, but these are the groups that stood up and wanted to participate and had the capacity to do so for this drought simulation. So WaterSmart has something called the South Saskatchewan River Operational Model. And I wish I had a picture of it, I didn't grab one, but it shows all the inflows and outflows within the South Saskatchewan River, like the whole thing, the whole model. So that's the red deer, the bow, the old man, and the little bit at the end, that's the South Sask. And so it was designed to stress the system to meet all 5 stages of the drought management response, right? So it was about lots of monitoring at first, and then starting to implement restrictions until you get to stage 4, which is, okay, we need to start doing water management agreements, and then stage 5, which basically the politicians take over. And it was in that moment that they said, if you don't figure out the water sharing agreements, we will start to have to make those decisions of who gets water and who doesn't. And so the approach that was taken in our simulation is the exact same approach that's being taken now. And so it's very timely because we simulated something similar to the 2000-2001 drought, where all the areas were affected, but we really stressed the red deer and the old man basins to see what would come out of it. And each participant was put into the role of a WPAC. So I heard the question earlier about what role WPACs would have. Susanna's right, there's no statutory authority in those situations, but they are a good place to bring people together as a convening group. And not only that, but developing relationships and trust in times of duress was helpful. A lot of these people know each other already. And so when it comes down to it, the relationship doesn't have to be built per se, it's already there, which is helpful. So yeah, each sub-basin was progressed through all 5 drought stages, and the diagram on the right just kind of shows what the process was. So they were like, hey, you're now in stage 3. So what are the performance measures for a specific time? And then have to look at, so what actions would be required? And then they'd make a decision, and then we'd crank up the heat one more time. And it's like, okay, now what? How would you respond? And one thing that I found really interesting was that being in the room, it was great to see that everyone agreed that they would share the pain. So the irrigators, the cattle ranchers, the municipalities, they all said, listen, we'll all take 60%, but everyone's got to take it. And I suspect that's in part where the water sharing agreements might land when it comes to the ones that are being developed right now. because ultimately, like I said, you have to go to church with these folks, or you got to see them down the street every day, or you don't want to encourage, you don't want to make it harder for them if you're having a good time and they're not. So very interesting process to go through, and we made some recommendations in the report, and this will be released right away here. Kind of land on 3 topics, which is around increasing collaboration. So we need to enhance drought management, which is why I think it's really good that the WPACs are hosting all of those workshops across the province. And folks also wanted to test their plans through drought exercises. So our report that's coming out right away lists out a number of different ways that you can do a drought simulation. We did the all-out fancy, really expensive one with a whole bunch of people in a room, but it doesn't need to be quite that bad. It's quite that expensive and fancy, but we figured we had the group, we had the interest, and we were able to find the funding for it. So let's go all out and let's pull a good report together, a good simulation, and see what can be done. We also developed, we made a recommendation to develop guidance tools, and this is something Water Council's been doing for the last couple rounds of projects that we've done. So obviously drought, but we also did one for source water protection, which might be of interest. And the idea is that we identify these gaps, and now we need to start plugging the gaps. And so we'll be developing a guide that'll be used to host the simulations. So it's not the simplest thing in the world to do, but it can be done. And especially just if you've got a nice guide to help you lead you through it as a relatively small municipality or a group of municipalities who want to do this, it's just helpful to have that sort of template. And then also wanted to raise awareness of how and set expectations for how current tools should be used. You'll see if you go through the guide, there's a ton of information about what topics you can consider, what makes sense, and it's meant to be tailored to your own needs. So as a watershed or as a municipality, depending on what's going on in your area, you can tailor that drought management plan. And then one thing that came out was that we didn't use the groundwater data because it's not very reliable for that spread of an area. And so Susanna mentioned also the groundwater information network. And part of the reason is because when you're in a drought, you need to find alternate sources of water potentially. So I wanted to improve groundwater knowledge and evaluate the value of infrastructure and non-structural solutions. So again, she talked about natural infrastructure, because it's true, riparian areas and how those are managed and everything can impact how fast either a flood is coming down or water retention in a drought. And then generally just increasing drought resilience. So being aware of it, developing these plans, all kinds of stuff, but lots to do. So the report and lit review will be out on this page today for that drought simulation. There's a really good literature review in there that goes over some of the previous droughts in Saskatchewan and other jurisdictions nearby. It's worth a read. And I provided a whole bunch of other drought resources for you. I'm not going to go through them, but you're more than free to have access to those. Happy to take questions. There's my email address in case you'd like to reach out to me, or website is there, as well as social media links.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Andre. We have a question from Larry.
Yes, Andre, just a question, like especially in South Saskatchewan, like the South Saskatchewan, the Old Man Basin. We were just down to an ASB conference in January, and in the city of Lethbridge, and we saw pictures of the water reservoirs and the reservoir systems. Not there, but previous to that, there wasn't one mention to me, maybe other individuals had it mentioned, but that, to try and ration water, other than the typical green thing in your hotel room that, if you don't wash your towels every day. But it's kind of disappointing when it was an agriculture thing, water's such a big thing, and yet it wasn't even mentioned.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it should be a higher priority. It should be on people's mind. I know when we met with the government of Alberta, they wanted to, one of their approaches was to make sure that they were sharing factual information with folks without necessarily triggering panic or an extreme reaction on things. And so we're certainly in a place where reservoirs are quite low, and there's likely going to need to be some rationing or some working together, raising awareness, however approach they want to take it. And as a municipality, a lot of the uses, it goes back in the river, it goes back in the system. So it's not really consumptive use. It's something like 75 or 80%. But certainly for consumptive water uses, I think you'll see that there'll be restrictions on that, whether it be golf courses or car washes. And some aspects of society reuse water more than others, like a lot of car washes do. But we'll see. It'll be interesting to see what comes out of these water sharing agreements, because I think that's going to be the driver.
Thank you.
Dave?
Yeah, still on the Red River Users Group. One of the things that I can't figure out is when you have a drought, why you wouldn't allow the 30% less maybe on some of your allotments out of the St. Mary's and the Old Man. They complain about them being out of water, but I think that's just a mismanagement thing. And I'd like to see them do something with that. Why would they not? And then they renew them. They have some come up. Why wouldn't they, like the one there, the guy give it back to them? Why wouldn't they just cancel that one and away we go? Another thing is, I know 2 farmers down there that actually have irrigation, and it's really nice, but they got their crop off just before winter. They turn the pivots on and they make it so it's a good seed bed. It's an ideal thing. Like, I don't really knock it, but I don't know if that's necessary. When they're going to put water on it in the spring, it might evaporate before then. But yeah, they turned the pivots on for a week on there when there was nothing on it. I think that's it. Like, I think that they should manage the waste of the water down there a little better. And the Red River, it hasn't got any much irrigation off it, but we're trying to leave room so it does have. But we have one of the largest systems for drinking water in Alberta, isn't it, Larry? Yeah, coming out of that river, and we're just using it for people, But I'd like to leave it so that my great grandchildren could have irrigation here, for one thing. But right for now, if they would shut them, put pressure on them to shut those down 30-40%, probably would solve their problems. All I see is pictures of the St. Mary's reservoir just about dry, and the Old Man, hasn't got much water in it. Well, I don't know. It's the old farming thing, I guess. I go back to it, maybe live within your means. I just would like you to take that message back to the table, because you're setting at that table. Thank you.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, like I mentioned, it's the water's not allocated based on the highest value use, and so people, who have their allocation are allowed to take it. So I agree with you. We could probably. I think the intent is to try to manage it to have the most benefits, especially in a time of drought, but we'll see. I'll take that back from it.
Okay, thank you. Joel has a question.
Thank you. Through the chair, Andre. Previously, when I've worked with different modelings, we used the cumulative effects modelling, and it was fantastic. It was really good. Is there anything operationally or through Ag Services that we can be setting up physically here on the ground to make sure that we get more exact data that we might be able to put into some of that modelling for yourselves if we find ourselves later down the year? Is there anything we can be doing here, water monitoring stations, or feeding more information out, maybe just getting some collective data that we can do here rather than using that generic provincial model, that we can get some more dialed in stuff? I know that when I've used it previously for polygons and for wildfire mitigation in BC, the cumulative effects study that we did in monitoring had a little bit more detail in it, and it was really, really interesting how varied it was. Is there anything we can do here to help?
Thanks. Yeah. Other than monitoring more often, or maybe in more locations, or if you've got some tributaries that you're not typically monitoring, that's been some of the concern, is that the main stems are well monitored, but some of the tribs aren't. And so I'm not involved with the monitoring, but that would be something that maybe, what I would suggest you do, actually, there's an email address, and I think it's drought@ab.ca. Let me just pull this up really quickly and see if I can figure out what the. Okay, yeah, there's an email address, epa.drought@gov.ab.ca, and that is the go-to email address that they're using to corral all of the stuff that's happening in there. If you have a question about how maybe you can contribute more information to it, they're probably the people to ask.
Okay, thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Another question, Justin?
Not so much a question to the speaker, but more to the board in general. It's further to Larry's point. Should we be ready to be able to advertise in the spring about voluntary, hey, we're having shortages, please don't water your lawn, minimize washing your vehicle, some of those voluntary pieces? And it's too early to put them out now, but should we be ready to send out those alerts to our hamlets and some of our larger groups?
I actually think it is time now to be proactive rather than reactive, and talk to our municipal partners as well, so that if we are, because we are facing a potential crisis here, and if it should materialize, I think we might as well have all the tools in place to implement rather than later, because it does take time, and I think that does make sound sense.
The other one that we've touched on briefly is evaluating firefighting capacity at some of our rural halls, and if we need additional storage capacity.
Okay. Another question from Ernie.
In one of your points, you were stating that drinking water was not a priority. I'm just kind of wondering, like, what else are they utilizing this for?
Oh, I think the term I used was a lower priority. And by priority, I mean in the order of how allocations are doled out. So if you were a growing municipality and you decided in the 70s, oh, I should probably get my hands on another license in case we grow into it. If we're in a drought situation that's similar to the one that was in 2001, then that new license from the 1970s, that would be one of the ones that would potentially get cut. And like I said, the water is not allocated based on its highest value use. It's based on when it was issued.
So the irrigation districts down in southern Alberta have first priority, right? So if they wanted to be complete jerks about it, they could say, go pound sand, we're going to water our crops. But like you said, they have to go to church with these guys and go to the bar afterwards.
But Andre, if we do hit stage 5 and it is basically a drought crisis and the government steps in, can't they change all that? And the first right is no longer. They will prioritize it to what they figure is the best.
Yes, my understanding is that is the case.
Okay, that's what I thought too. Okay,
But
go ahead. Any further questions for Andre?
see, there's a hand up from Andrew's iPhone. I'm not sure if that's an old.
For some reason, I can't see that on my screen. I'm sorry, so we don't have that screen up. Okay, Andrew?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Andre, this is kind of a question for you. So we've been involved in a lot of the water sharing agreement discussions through our commission and collaborating on the drinking water things and some of the other issues my board raised here. But I'm curious if you've heard anything more about how we're going to mitigate the effects of the drought for livestock producers. Lots of what I've heard is mostly focused on flowing water diversions and not so much based on our non-flowing, surface water stuff. That's who I'm most worried about right now.
Yeah, so I'm less familiar with this side of things, but I know there's a joint federal provincial program to support livestock producers. I know Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation has a ton of supports out there, and whether it be to they can run pipes to refill dugouts and stuff like that, depending. So I know AFSC is also they've got a program that's pretty undersubscribed that has to do with drought, basically insurance. And so I'm not, unfortunately, not much more familiar with that. then, and I mentioned the MOU that the irrigation districts have that would prioritize water for cattle over crops if they needed to. I think what is going to be really interesting to me is if some rather large licensees decide, yeah, I'm not playing along. I don't expect it to happen, but it could happen, I suppose.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Dave?
The one for cattle, I would talk to.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, you get 3/4 or 25%, but you have to have the whole project, like if it's a well and you're putting in the water and all that, you have to have the whole thing, and then they'll come out and approve it, and they might pay you. The guy didn't, he sort of was a little fuzzy, not whether he was gonna pay it or not. That's probably why you're not getting it fully allocated. It'd just be a message you could send back to them. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any further questions? If not, well, thank you very much for your presentation, Andre. It's very timely. I think with the looming drought crisis it's at the forefront of all our minds. So this is good information, and the County of Stellar definitely wants to be proactive rather than reactive. So we definitely value this information. And then just on a piece, I mean, we have a dugout workshop that Quentin has set for March 6th. So it's to, I guess, save what water there is there and better managed water. So it's an initial step. I think that is a good direction. So we're looking for lots of those initiatives to get ahead of the curve instead of behind it.
Great. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity, folks. That drought guide has some great ideas for what you can do to be proactive and in the expected coming drought. So thank you very much. Good to see you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Andre.
Okay, I guess we'll move on to our agenda. 5.1, the admin report on page 5.
All right, so we've brought in some gopher control product for 2024, currently sitting in our bay, ready to go. We're just getting busy gearing up for spring, getting our equipment ready. We've got some planning started, very briefly started at this point for our own county drought resilient plan. Actually, Mr. Stuhlberg and I are attending a workshop in Lethbridge tomorrow, so hopefully with a little more detail from that, we can kind of create something. Wild boar inspections been conducted both by Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation and myself. We've been doing some drive-by inspections and just seeing where the wild boar are being contained on their premises. There's a few pens that meet or that have met minimum requirements set up by the province, so we're just kind of monitoring where the boar are, if they're in those pens or somewhere else. Advertising for seasonal staff, getting that going. We'll be doing some interviewing here right shortly. An ad went out for 2 parcels of land down in the south, southeast of 10 and northwest of 10, 3520. The leasee gave notice. They moved away, so we have those 2 quarters we will get set out for someone to lease from us for a 2-year period. Then they'll line up with everything else we have.
Is there a timeline on when that applications have to be in to you?
Yes, I believe it's March 22, which gives me enough time to get an RFD into the April council meeting. I've been advertising for the Agricultural Service Board bursary. Deadline is April 15. And then some of our workshops we've got lined up. March 4, I'm presenting to the Palliser Grazing Club on the SCAP, or Sustainable Canadian Agriculture Partnership Program. March 6 is our dugout workshop, which you had mentioned. March 12 is the Fairness in Farming transition. March 27, we are co-hosting a shelter belt workshop. March 28 is a fire smart workshop, and April 18 is a presentation to the Buffalo Lake Nature Club on invasive species. We'll be covering both aquatics and land species for that one.
Good number of workshops. Nice to see those coming up. And then the shelter belt workshop, that's in partnership with Starland County, I assume?
Starland and Nihil. It's a tri-host, yeah.
So they chose the date, I'm assuming.
Yeah, it's also in the evening, so it doesn't affect.
Okay, it doesn't affect ASB. Okay.
That's right.
Okay, good.
So currently we're sitting at 50 people registered for the farming transition workshop and 15 for the dugout workshop.
Okay, so there's still time to get into those, assuming.
I will take more. I believe my cutoff for the farming for transition was February 26th, but I'll definitely take more for sure.
Okay. Any of the board knows of somebody that wants in, they better hurry. Any questions for Quentin on his report?
Give you a motion to move it if nobody has any questions, Mr.
Okay, all in favor of James's motion and carried. 5.2 Agriculture Finance Assistant Programs Update on page 7.
Yeah, so I just put in here a brief summary of what their programs look like, just for you guys to review and put it out there for people to see. Their website is actually pretty easy to navigate, to get around and find information on these different things.
Okay, well, lots of information there, lots of contacts.
A lot of clicking, but it's easy to get around, and depending on what it is you're trying to zero in on for funding.
Great. Dave, got a question?
No, I got an answer. It'll be paid out by the 15th of March, so they better hurry up, and if they haven't put it in, then they'll accept them late. So anybody that hasn't put in for it, that have 15 cows, get with it and get it put in.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to all be paid out by the 15th? Oh, March. Thank you.
Is there anything further on this one? Larry? Okay, except for information, all those in favor and carried. Moving on to 6.1 Youth Agriculture Education. Mr. Nyberg had sent something around earlier for this to be included.
So, Mr. Chairman, we could postpone this to the next meeting. I know we're short on time a little bit. It was just at the Ag Service Board conference that we brought this up, and there was a presentation there, and I think there might be a possibility for us to do something here, but it might warrant a little bit more discussion later date. So if it pleases the chair, can we postpone it till the next meeting? It's not timely in that.
It's up to the board. I mean, I think everyone knows the presenter that James was talking about, Nicole Neubauer, that had give a pretty good presentation. And I think some of the things that struck me were that like 2% of the population is feeding the world, basically. And there's such a gap in knowledge between that 2% and the consumers. So this is an ag education program that we felt needed to be shared. Larry?
I know one thing we did talk about for that education would be Rotary Farmers Supper. I don't know the timing on it, if it was in the summer or when that was.
We could again do that at any time. It could be their fall, or there could be their.
Just if we could use it at the Rotary Farmers, and supply a speaker for it, maybe it was very, like I thought, very good, and it should catch a crowd there that maybe could take that message out too.
Yeah. There was lots of things that come to mind where this information could be shared between the school divisions like Clearview and East Central Catholic, and even RMA, Teachers Convention, now Rotary. I mean, these are all, I think, good places to share this, but If you want to work on it at another date, it doesn't matter to me.
Well, I just, Mr. Chairman, I know we're time consuming and we've already had a lot of conversation. I think there's still more to be had about this, but I think we do have consensus. We want to go forward with this. But again, where and why and how might take a little bit more conversation to have.
I think it would be a good opportunity at our joint meeting with Clearview to bring this one up.
Idea. There's another one. Yep.
Okay, will you enter a motion to table then?
Yeah, I'll do that. Absolutely.
For clarification to the next board meeting or committee of the whole, what do you want to
No,
take?
just to the next board meeting. I think we could deal with it here.
Yeah. Okay, all those in favor? And carried. 7.1, Walker Well Ag Tank Loader Station and Bymore Water Station.
So as you guys are aware, in August of 23, we had quite a bit of vandalism. The overhead door was busted. Nothing was taken, but they drove their way into the building. And then in November of 23, somebody was in need of a man door, so they took ours. So, I mean, I hope that keeps the heat in their house. So we have, and again, nothing was taken on the inside except for the door. So we have boarded them over. Both doors are boarded over at this point. Just want to have the conversation to see where we're at. Are we going to open this tank loader back up next year, or am I shutting it down? Looking for some direction.
Justin?
I know previously where I was at, that I felt like we were just pouring good money down a hole trying to keep up with all the vandalism. But given our current drought conditions and all the rapid discussions about rationing out of river, I'm thinking now is not not the right time, because this is an alternate source from rivers that we can access. So I have changed my thinking on this one, and I would be willing to spend what we need to replace doors and try and get it functioning for this year during the drought. I was against it, but I've kind of migrated a bit.
I'm totally following Justin's line of thinking there. Ernie?
And that the current price of a 310 a cubic meter, and if we're costing us more to replace that compared to the 310, I'm very reluctant on opening it up.
Dave?
Yeah, I've heard from quite a few of the, what do you say, relatives or friends that in the Bymore area, and they don't want it closed. They said if we can catch whoever's like that, we'll settle the county's problem for them. And, but no, I don't think in a drought system you want to close a Walker well. I'd vote against that.
Larry?
I was on the same track as Justin before, but I do agree with it to this piece. But do we need to put chain link fencing around it? Do we need to do something else for security? Because we're probably going to show that we're practicing insanity, because next year, we could have the same thing happen all over again. So it's just a real concern. If we keep doing it the way we're doing it, we've proven that, and it will come up to the point where, like it or not, for the residents, it's going to be a vote at the table whether it's open or not.
Well, that's my line of thinking again, is with Larry, is that maybe we don't replace a big door so that someone can drive through, and maybe we place some cement barriers in front so they can't drive into the building. I mean, it doesn't have to be like it was before, of course. Make it less available for vandalism. Quentin?
Without giving away what we're doing to the inside, we are making it tougher to get in. We won't be replacing the overhead door. I do need a way to get in to replace tanks as they break or add, but I've got a got something in mind for that. I don't think chain link fence would be the answer. I think that's easily cuttable. However, we are going to put, if you guys say open it up, we are going to put cement barricades in front to keep vehicles from accidentally running into it.
James.
And I haven't really, I was hoping this would go away and the fact that the vandalism would go away and we could just continue to open and this becomes a nice to do versus a need to do because we're literally a few miles down the road. We have access to water. So I get to the point where, and I understand where everybody's coming from, but where does it end? Like, where do we put full barricades all the way around this? And then do we run a longer hose so that they can't get to it and they cut our hose and they wreck? I mean, this has been a real pain. And I don't know, I mean, there has this, and I don't think, I mean, maybe it is somebody from out of area, but the fact that it's happening over and over and over again it's not like it's a drive-by vandalism. This is something that is happening. Somebody in the area is doing this. And I'm sorry, but I would vote to close it. Even if we closed it for a year, and I know it's a shitty time of year to close it or time in the drought area, but I mean, heaven willing, we would have a pile of snow and a pile of rain come May and we won't be in that situation. But I don't know. I'm like, when do we stop? Is 10,000? Is 15,000? Is 25,000? You know, that argument of, you know, how many walking tracks do you need? Is one good enough? Is two good enough? Is three good enough? This gets to be money that's, I'll be honest, I'm hard pressed to say this, that we continue to put money into this, but.
Well, I think it was fortunate, if you could call vandalism fortunate, but I think it was fortunate that it was limited just to a walk-in door. So in my opinion, timing is totally wrong to close a water source when a drought is looming and to be a drought resilient community. That's what we've heard all morning. And we've heard about water rationing from the rivers and we heard that cattle need to have a priority. So to me, the timing is definitely wrong. And Dave was next. Yeah, go ahead.
I think, no, I'm for leaving it open. But you get those cement ones that we have to set there with a backhoe, put them around there. And when they do down the road decide to close it, then you can pick them up and we can use them somewhere else.
That's right. James?
So if entertaining that frame of thought, if we do get a bunch of snow in come April and we get a bunch of rain in May, would you entertain closing it at that point in time? That's my discussion at that point, because I understand your argument right now is the fact that it is that situation of the drought, and I can understand that argument. But and I understand that it's just one door, but this has been multiple times. This isn't a one-time issue. I don't know how many, every year that I think I've sat on council and sat at this board, there has been some sort of vandalism there. And I don't know why. Like, why? Does it just say pick me?
Vandalize a free service.
Yeah.
Well, there is a box on the outside that maybe should have a sign that there is no.
There is no cash there. Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
Justin?
To answer your question where I'm at, if we got a ton of rain and snow and runoff, then I am completely on board with closing this. And I would go a step further. My support during a drought has limits. I would like to see a cap placed. I mean, get it open, get it functional, but my support is not unlimited. So I would like to see a cap on, I know we're talking about some cement blocks. That's pretty modest investment, replacing a man door. But if we're sitting at this table in 3 months, replacing the door again, and then in the summer, something else, I'd like to see some sort of budgetary cap put on this.
Have you got any price in mind, Quentin, what the door and locks would cost?
To get a decent door that's gonna hopefully keep people out, we're probably looking at about $500, $600.
You can buy a used one. Like honestly, this isn't something that needs to be
You
done.
don't need a Taj Mahal.
No, like I know what you're saying is a new one, but I mean,
Get your door.
yeah, this used steel door. I might even have one at home. Size, and I'd give you a hell of a deal.
The only other thing I would do on top of the cement blocks would be to buy some used tin somewhere and weatherproof my wall that we've created where the overhead door was. I won't put an overhead door back in, but just weatherproof the plywood from hopefully torrential downpours of rain.
So did you have a limit in mind, Justin?
Well, and this is kind of odd when you talk about municipalities because we never incorporate our labor well. But I don't know, would 2,500 cover the tin, cement blocks, door, like what? We do have some operational costs with utilities that go along with this. So would 2,500 for the year cut it, or is that?
I don't recall what a cement block costs us. Do you, Joe? I would think 2,500 would do it.
A cement block is $100.
I would vote against putting any limit on it. And if you want used, you said you were looking maybe for some used tin to put on it. I'll give you all that. I got enough to do 5 of them.
Larry?
I'm on track with the fact, like if we did cap it at maybe at 25, depending on what the moisture is, but these even at the one that we have at Schollard, if this conversation comes up and we were putting water or money into something, I'd much rather look at something that we're putting a loading station in Big Valley where we're tied into a known commodity. But these things here are just, they're a money pit for certain individuals. And like I've got the water station at Gadsby and there's a lot of trucks go in there and haul water to their cattle. Yeah, they have to pay for it, but they're more than happy right now to do that.
Is there a chance that the well may dry? I don't know the wells very well out in that area. I'm just, we would look really foolish if we spent $10,000 on this, got halfway through the year and it dried up. I mean, I'm just stating that might be a product that we should look at, have the well tested and just maybe see what it's, I don't know. I don't know if you can, or we've had lots of updated information on groundwater surveys, so I don't know how that goes. Like, you know the wells out there more.
Well, the thing is, it's never failed in the past and we've had dry, we've had a lot of dry years.
If it didn't fail in 2000, it's a good chance it won't now.
Dave?
I know those wells really well. Lived a mile and a quarter from there, and the water that Weimar used till they got the river water in there come from that well. Billy Lane's place, right beside it, has lots of water.
Maybe use names.
And it is I don't know, whoever's now. Buckwitz is live on the north side, there's lots of water in through there. That is not going to be a problem. If they have a problem, there is going to be a pile of them over at Indiang that are completely done because they're low now. I don't, yeah, I know, and I'm not being.
Well, that's good. That's good.
I'm not in for putting a cap on it at all.
Okay, well, I think we've had enough discussion.
I'll get the ball rolling. I'll make a motion, see where the cards lie. I'll move that we make a minimal in renovations to get it operational to a cap of 2,500.
Give them a little bit of room.
It's an auction sale or what? Come on.
Give them a little bit of room, I think.
All right, 3,000 and I mean, report back if there is any damage afterwards because this is getting out of hand.
Okay, Justin has made the motion to keep the well open with a maximum of $3,000 renovations to it. All those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Opposed with Grover and Nyberg.
I'm not opposed to close the well. I'm opposed to put a cap on it.
Okay. Okay, moving on, 8.1, Rising Stars Cattle Clinic funding on page 19.
I know you're gonna get, yeah, sorry, Les. You got it, you got it. I knew it wasn't a Jeopardy issue.
I'm not sure if I actually need a request for decision for this or not. It,
You do.
Yeah.
We went through this.
It's on the agenda. We'll go through the motions here and do you want to introduce it or?
so the Rising Star Cattle Clinic organization applied to the county for some recreational funding for their upcoming cattle clinic. They were asking for $1,200. And council has asked this get put to Ag Service Board for possible funding.
So if you want clarification, they were brought in as the first intake of the county investment project for 2024. When council met in January and discussed this, they suggested that the Agriculture Service Board and the Rural Development Fund would be a better avenue for this funding to come through. So it was requested to be discussed at this meeting.
Okay. Who's next?
Yes. Just a question, Quentin, do you have funds in your budget for this item? Yes. Okay, so this is something you could make that decision anyways, okay?
Okay. Anybody else? Dave?
Yeah, did we not already give them $1,000 this year or not?
No, we didn't.
No, we haven't. Okay, well, I'm in then. I just.
Yeah, Michelle was correct. It was redirected to ASB.
Oh, it was redirected.
Yeah. Paul?
If there's no more further talk about it, I will move that we go with option one to
On the $1,200 request from ASB. Okay. All those in favor? That one is carried. Moving on to 8.2, ASB information tours. This one, we've, in the past, we've had ag tours within our county. This year, with the grand opening of Crop Management Network in Stettler, the ASB was invited there, the county was invited there. It fell on a meeting date, so Larry Quinton and I did go to their grand opening just for a short time, and we were definitely invited back for a tour. So that is on our list of things to do if it pleases the board. And further to that, it was how many other of these such ag tours would you like to see done this year? And if you got ideas where you'd like to go, and have you got ideas if you'd like to do it in place of a meeting or in addition to an ASB meeting? So those are sort of the things we're pondering right now. I guess first we'll start with the crop management one. If everybody is interested in doing a tour of that new facility, we need that direction. Larry?
I think from what we saw the day we were there, it wouldn't hurt for the touring. It seems to be it's going to be one of the bigger fertilizer systems in our, definitely in our area.
Okay.
And they were very eager to show us too. So I don't know. I wouldn't mind seeing an operational tour.
Seeing the outside, it'd be nice to see the outside and learn more about it. Yeah. Okay. Is that in a form of a motion that we actually do that tour?
I would put that as a motion, yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's something that you could set up, Clinton. And I guess it's the board's choice if you want it independent of a meeting date or in place of a meeting, or what Quentin can find out, I guess, with them. But
Mr. Chairman, I think if we could do it actually maybe the same day as the meeting date, but do it after when we have a light MPC meeting, because we do typically have a little bit later in the day. We could go from here to there.
Kill two birds with one stone.
I just have so many days that are already.
Yeah. And it does save,
Other priorities, once I'm here, you got me. So.
that makes sense. So Dave?
I'd like to have it any day. It doesn't really matter as long as you don't charge for it. It's good for me.
Well, if we coordinate it with a MPC.
Well, you could, but like this here, there, that, it's a little long, eh?
Well, yeah,
You
but-
have a light one, but then would you know, would they be ready at that time if we happen to have a light?
Yeah, well, we can judge a MPC, but, okay, I think we can work the details out, but we do have the motion to go ahead with the tour of crop management, and all those in favor? And carried. Quentin can set that up. Okay, well, we'll move through some of the correspondence here. 9.1 is the Deputy Minister's Alberta Drought Livestock Assistance Update, which I think we all, probably, that's on page 24. And that's just pretty much outlining the expansion, isn't it, the extension? Yeah. So it was expanded to include 23 more municipalities, and the deadline was extended to, I think it was February 22nd or something. That really doesn't affect us too much in this county, Dave.
I find that very hard to swallow. When they get 3 or 4 bales an acre of hay and they couldn't get their crops hardly off for the water laying there, and now they're expanded to that less. Yeah, I don't know. I'll receive it for information.
Okay, Dave moves to receive all.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, I think what you have to look at it is like in our county, you have one part of our county that is extremely dry, and then as you can see it by the maps, there are parts of our county that were just dry. So I think that it's a big area. So
yeah,
that was just a comment. I don't want to research any of the other communities out there.
Yeah. And it was a big pushback from the various municipalities and the province to the federal government, because the federal government was the one that drew the maps, and it was them that left them out. So there was a big push for the feds to enhance it, and they did. So, but anyways, Dave got a motion to accept for information. All those in favor? And that's carried. 9.2, the results-driven agriculture research update on page 26. So, do you have anything on this, Quentin, that we should be taking note of, especially?
Not that isn't highlighted in your report from the ADM town hall meeting we had in January.
Well, there's a lot of information there to read, but and
You want to just move out with all of them, Mr. Chairman? Just
I
any
think
highlights that we have that you want to bring up. Other than that, I would move all the correspondence.
and I'd just like to do them in groups, if you don't mind. I've grouped some of the other ones together to speed this up.
Okay, fair enough.
Do this one first. If you would move this one.
I'll move it to receive for information.
Okay,
Absolutely.
all in favor? Okay, that one's carried. Now moving on to 9.3, 9.4, 9.5, 9.11, and 9.14. They're all dealing with the same, pretty much the same article. And that's just exactly what we've been talking about earlier about the drought assistance. And to me, it's basically been addressed. So those ones are all a non-issue.
I'll accept for information.
Larry moves all those because they're all dealing with the same topic. Moving on to 9.6. Oh, sorry, all in favor? I'm in a rush, I'm hungry. 9.6 is the Walter's report on how this is something that ASBs have been pushing for a long time, again, is to get extensions in the province. And this is the group that is working to get it back. And it includes input from ASBs, private enterprise government, universities, and various things. So I think they got a short timeline here. And I guess if we had, how does that work? Do they, through Walter, have they consulted other ASBs for input on this, or is he the key rep?
Well, he'll be the key rep from the Provincial Ag Service Board Committee, so your avenue would be Brenda Knight.
Oh, Brenda Knight through there. Okay, so,
She would present him the information she needs from the central region.
okay, so I guess with that, if anybody has any further ideas, you can read what's out there so far. And if anybody has any further input, they would get in touch with Brenda Knight then.
So Mr. Chairman, is this a situation where we would write a letter of support for this, or how would that go?
That's totally possible too.
I mean,
We don't know how it shakes down exactly yet, but the premise is good.
is that what you see, Quentin, that we would write a letter of support saying that we are in favor of this association going forward? Because that's what I'm understanding this to be, right?
You can always do a letter of support. I don't necessarily think it's asking for one. I don't think
What I'll do is I'll make a note that we reach out to Brenda Knight and ask what we can do to either through Quentin or through yourself to see what they may or may not need to help this forward.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, I think.
Okay.
All those in favor? And that one's carried. Okay, moving on to 9.7, 9.8, 9.9. These ones all deal with the same topic as well, which is the prohibiting of glyphosate. And I'm sure this, judging by the importance of that in the agricultural community, this will probably come through as a resolution. Do you see that happening, Quentin?
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Yep.
So I think we could probably wait for that. That'll.
See for information.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'll give you a motion to receive these three for information, 9.7, 9.8, 9.9.
All those in favor? Okay, moving on to 9.10, Alberta Cooperative Agriculture Extension Industry Stakeholder Project Overview on 61. That one is, this is pest management. Is oh, sorry, that one should have been included in the
other one.
That's glyphosate as well. So would you amend your motion to? Okay. And okay, 9.11 we'd already discussed. The precipitation maps on 9.12. Are we slow, going too fast?
I think our minute taker is.
Amend the motion, you're gonna have to take a new vote again, please.
Yeah, sorry. To a vote on the amended motion.
Sure, my motion put that in there.
Yeah. Okay. All,
Almost do.
No, I just laughing.
I'm sorry.
Kind of vote.
So then we're moving on to the precipitation maps, 9.12 is 71. They're included in our package. So
I could have sent you guys a pile of maps, but I tried to just pick out the highlights.
Just the low lights.
As depressing as they are, I will give you a motion to receive for information.
On the weather map note though, I did send you guys this morning the link to this page where you can go look at all the maps you want. I'll continue to put them in the package, but at any given time you can look at any of the maps.
did I hear earlier this morning that these are adjusted monthly about the maps?
Yeah, we get an update monthly. Yeah.
So that's good. That's a good tab to have for sure. Justin has made a motion that the weather maps, precipitation maps be accepted. And all those in favor? Carried. Moving on to 9.13, the Alberta Agriculture Hall of Fame 2024 renomination form. This one runs a little differently because it's only open to those that have been previously nominated but didn't win. So I guess if anybody has someone in mind for that, there's an opportunity there. I don't know if anybody has anybody in mind yet, but if not, I think take note of that one.
Okay,
And,
I'll receive for information on that, just everybody take note.
okay, thank you. All in favor? Carried. Just, couldn't put a lot of information together here, so I just don't want to go over and improve it in one lump sum without properly looking at it. 9.14 was the one that we had included earlier. Now going to the last one, Agriculture for Life, Why I Love Alberta Youth Challenge on page 78. This one it's a contest basically open to students grade 9 through grade 12. It's a video contest actually on Why I Love Alberta. So I think this one we should probably pass on to the schools. Yeah. And both the East Central Catholic and the Clearview school divisions. Because I think especially once you get in high school, they have probably classes and stuff that would this would quite fit into. So would, I guess someone make that motion? Justin?
I'll move that we forward this along to our respective school divisions in our county.
No, that sounds good. All those in favor? And carried. Moving on, 10.1, the year-to-date financials of verbal report.
Pretty quiet.
You saying no money? It's early in the year, there should be something.
I'm multitasking, sorry. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, are you about to adjourn the meeting?
No,
Financials first.
No?
waiting for financial update.
Oh, okay.
So really, because we're just barely into 2024, there's nothing really exciting that has jumped off the pages. Vehicle repair is already at 25%, but that's because we do a majority of our work this time of year.
And like spray.
You've been getting your trucks ready, right, Quentin? All your trucks, and you're putting the GPS on and changing that stuff, so
Yeah, that's
you have been pretty busy. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Updated spraying equipment and all that is probably in the works.
advertising. We have changed things up a little bit. We did some radio ads, so you'll see my advertising budget get used up really fast this year because we're trying a different avenue, trying to get more people. People say they want the newspapers, but nobody looks in the newspapers. People want it on Facebook, but they don't read Facebook. So we're trying some different things. We'll see what happens.
Okay. So not too much moving on the finance end of it yet.
Nope.
So just if I could, Mr. Chairman, like there's a lot of newsletters that come directly to your email, right? I mean, I get a ton of those, and I'm just wondering if is that something you should look at go forward, to have a newsletter that comes from the Ag Service? People subscribe to it just like they would anything else. It's not any different than the articles that you would put out anyways on Facebook or anything else. It's just a regular newsletter, what's going on in the ag thing. We talk about this being an ag community. And I'll be honest, I'm connected to the county and I know lots of what goes on, but where I found out about some of the stuff wasn't necessarily, it was in our council notes more than it is in our ag packages, right? Not for any reason that they come up and they put on here, but then I don't see this beautiful dugout workshop picture, right? So I'm just wondering if that's how much that means to you, like if it makes a big difference to you going forward as far as time, or is that a communications sport, or where we do that?
And we do have the county connections that we're always in, but if you want to separate one single-sized piece of paper, front and back, given the highlights every 2 months, every month, whatever it is, that's the direction, we'll do it.
I'm just thinking that then you build an email base that goes forward and people subscribe to it, right? I mean, click of a button, you could have, I don't know, 100, 200 people that you were contacting, and then those people that are out there would be part of it. I don't know, just a thought.
Michelle.
This is a representative of the communications department. We do sort of have that currently. People do follow our ag service board calendar and our events calendars on the website. So they sign up and they get the emails as those are sent out. But if you want us to formalize it, it is always an option.
Can you add my email to that?
Probably, yeah.
And the reason, so often when we do things like this, we make decisions, but we're not involved because everybody assumes we're involved on the backside. We don't know how it works, right? So that would be awesome. And then I just think we could expand that. If that's already happening, then then you would have a number of email addresses.
That's kind of how it would have to work. The emails would have to come from our website.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
We're probably going to end up on some sort of spam list if we're mass emailing.
Yeah, no, and that's.
100 people from one of our.
We do have the infrastructure on the website to be able to make that happen.
When I mean, the GOA sends that out all the time, right? I mean, we have to have the technology to be able to send out a mass email.
It does seem to be the way society's moving. I mean, our school division does this. You can choose to subscribe or not. It comes out as a link texted right to your phone, and you can click on their newsletter for that week or that month.
An email, but I don't know if I want to go as far as phone, but maybe. And the only reason I also say that is it would be, then you would have a base when you want to send out for surveys and stuff. That would create a base for you to hit people directly involved in agriculture too, right?
And time-wise, a lot, the county connection is quarterly, and sometimes you sort of miss deadlines because the issue isn't coming out for a bit. So I guess we can leave that one in administration's hands to see what they can come up with on that one. And I guess we would need a mover for the verbal report of the financials. Paul?
I'll do so.
All in favor? Carried. Moving on to the provincial ASB conference that was held in Lethbridge. All the board was there with the exception of Justin. Does anybody have anything to share from that? I mean, the first day was largely on, the background of ASBs, on the Soil Act, the Weed Act, Pest Act, and all those. And it was just a lot of background information. And something that's kind of surprised me is how much soil erosion Southern Alberta still has to deal with. I thought with the changing farming methods that might have been pretty much eliminated, but it's still a major issue for Southern Alberta. We did talk about the education presentation already, and that was a pretty good one. So if anybody has anything else to share that they figure it needs to be shared, not Dave?
I think the trade show was good. For a change, it had different stuff, different people there than normal that I've been to. And if you wanted education on some of that stuff, it was there. All you had to do was ask them. I thought it was they sure have lots of room in that big building.
The facility's tremendous. It was a new facility. It was tremendous. And the trade show was open all the time.
Yeah, that is a big thing.
Yeah, sometimes, like at RMA, they have a trade show, and sometimes they pick the key time of the afternoon or whatever to open it, and then it's not there for the rest of the time. So I thought this was well done. Ernie?
The part that really surprised me on either videos, it was the amount that they worked their land down and how short like the stubble is. There's nothing left.
Yeah. I think that's largely to different crops. I mean, they grow different crops than we do, so must require it. But
I kept hearing how important water was. I had this guy that drove down there and drove back with me, and about 25 times, look how important water is. He may have been in a drought situation, I don't know, but I think he was still shell shocked from that drought.
Well, what I thought is like all the industry and spin-offs down there, like when you get to those communities like Tabor, Coaldale, Lethbridge, they're thriving. They're thriving, and they're in a desert basically, and they're thriving. I mean, it just shows what water can do. And
I heard that.
27 times. Yeah, no, there were good presentations, of course. I think with that, we'll ask for a mover to accept. Dave, accepts for information.
Leave it for information.
All in favor? Carried. 11.2, the multi-year regional drought workshop. This is one that Joe had attended in Black Falls, and do you have some things you'd like to share from that?
Yeah, thank you through the chair. It was a fantastic event. It was one that we came back from the ASB or from the agricultural conference and kind of get dropped into the Battle River Watershed Alliance, and they really just brought exactly what we're talking about just now. They're really bringing forward a lot more planning, a lot more drought resilience, looking at what we're doing before, a lot of the warning signs, a lot of the key indicators that we should be getting out there, and what we should be doing during the drought, what we should be potentially doing after it as well, and a lot of the recovery methods and what levers and tools we can use. So it's really just to let council know that we're attending these conferences and attending these opportunities and gaining and gleaning as much information as possible. We're collecting a lot of information at these. There's one tomorrow. It's a very similar type, the exact same type meeting again. But just to kind of let council know that we're actively attending them and making sure that we're getting as much information out of these things as possible to bring back and feed into what we're doing. And that's also leading into Quinton's plan for emergency drought this year as well. So we're activating a lot of these plans and actually activating them and putting them in place just now so that we're aware of what we need to be working alongside. We're also linking a lot of these plans with our new fire department and making sure that they're aware, and we're cross-training our staff, radio communications, how the new regional fire manager wants us to communicate over the radios, how he would like us to respond, and also just modifying some of our operations to make sure that we're aligning that in case there is a major drought that then potentially leads on to wildfires as well. So we're moving CVIPs for the vehicles. This is Ivan's request, which is a fantastic request. Moving CVIPs for vehicles forward a couple of months. So we're moving all of the CVIPs for the emergency vehicles forward a couple of months so that if there is a drought and we do see wildfires, then the vehicles are ready to roll and they're ready to go there. So we're actively working behind the scenes in a lot of these plans from these events that we've been at, and they're fantastic. A lot of the stuff that we got out of it was first class. So just really just a verbal update just to let you guys know where we're at with it.
I think it's really important for the county to be proactive rather than reactive, and it looks like initial steps are going that way. And I was just thinking too with water conservation. I mean, I remember a number of years ago, some communities that were had water restrictions. They went with the brick or a device to displace water in the toilet tank. I mean, it can be a fundraiser for a nonprofit in the community, and if every toilet use less water, it would bound to save water. You know, it's just simple things, but I think we need to look at everything for water conservation, basically. Anybody have any other questions on that one for Joe? Quentin and I are attending one that's in Lethbridge's office.
I'll make the motion to accept receipt for information.
Okay, all in favor? And carried. And then on the 11.3, the ag value added ag regional roundtable, which I attended virtually. I mean, there's just a couple key things is that the province has some lofty goals of increasing agriculture in the province, I guess, like value added agriculture. So I think our county should be probably ready and willing to accept development that's ag related. And and the biggest thing, I guess, from that is, I mean, if you have ideas, I mean, there are several pieces to it. Like infrastructure was one. I think with rail and water transportation of water, like pipelines, I think that's something we need in this county. So I think we need to be pushing for that, and I think that would help, you know, ag value added. And at the end of my report, there is a contact that if people can share their ideas, what they see or the need to develop ag value added in this province. So
Did they speculate how much of grant funding was coming with it or not?
There is funding, and like that was a part of the thing. That was one of the finance side was an issue, and some of the grant funding is not working as well as it could. just the way they have to match or way they have to have it up front or whatever, if they could sort of backload it, it would be better, because there was a finance expert that was on the panel as well. So, I mean, they're looking at all the pieces, so now is the time to fix it, basically.
Mr. Chairman, I'll give you the motion to receive that for information as well.
Okay, all in favor? Carried. The ADM town hall meetings, one was virtual, one was in person. The in-person one was actually at Lethbridge that Quentin and I attended, and those reports are basically there. So if you have any questions, you can get, and we discussed a lot of this earlier. I mean, the piece of loss of agricultural land to green initiatives is a concern for the agriculture in this province. And then, of course, the government has issued a moratorium on those kind of projects until tomorrow, and which they'll be coming up with a plan. But in 2022, 2/3 of all green energy projects, wind and solar in Canada, were done in Alberta. So that, I think, it was the alarming rate that made the province decide to put a pause on it, because there was ag land going out of production at an alarming rate. And I guess maybe it's the tax situation in Alberta. I'm not sure why they all chose to Alberta, but so I guess we'll find out in coming months how that's going to go. But other than that, a motion to Dave.
Received for information.
Okay, thank you. The seed cleaning plant, whoops, all in favor? And carried. And then we're moving on to 11.6.
Can I interrupt, Mr. Chairman? Sorry.
Yeah, you bet.
I'm sorry, I'm not very good on Zoom. I just sent you guys a press release from the Premier's office. They've lifted the moratorium on the green energy projects. So it is putting agricultural land first, which I thought was a pretty interesting read, but I thought you guys might enjoy that.
Thank you.
Question for you then.
Go ahead, Dave.
Yeah.
Prime agriculture land, okay. Native prairie grass native to Alberta, is that not worth saving? Is that not prime? Did you ask them that?
No, this just came out, Dave. I emailed it to you so you can read it. And so far, that's all the information we've got. But I'm sure that we can ask some further questions, maybe at convention in March.
Because in my farming operation, that grass that you can graze in the spring and it actually has some jam to it is worth more than a lot of the land that's broke fence to fence. I don't know.
Yeah, I would agree.
Like,
But those are
where do you
questions
judge
that we
what
can ask in
prime,
both.
where do you judge what prime agricultural land is?
Right, and
In
definitions.
my operation, prime is that old prairie grass that you can pasture in the spring and you don't have to buy $300 bales.
Right.
You know what I mean? Anyhow.
I'm sure that is probably right.
Thank you, Beth.
Yeah, okay, I guess I was thinking
Sorry, Mr.
tomorrow, they were lifting it because it's February 29th, but I suppose when they set this up, they use February 28th as a date. That's typically the end of February, but, so that's good to know that egg.
I think we wanted to save tomorrow for the budget, right?
Oh, right.
I got one extra
Comes
day.
tomorrow, yeah, yep. Oh, good information. Thanks for sharing that. And then back to 11.6, the county established seed cleaning plant report. Mr. Grover submitted on page 85. You got any questions for Dave? Or,
Go ahead.
Just one question. I know a while back we had invited them as a delegation and there was some miscommunication. Is that gone by the wayside? Is that something we're still interested in, or?
you got anything on that, Dave? Or
My question would be, what do you want to ask them? Ask. I said on the board.
Where's the finances at? I think we need to do a little bit in camera.
Bottom there, the board has tightened up the finances, all checks are doubled, signed, we didn't make as much money as we did last year, but we're running it with one guy. And we're not wearing out, we took the 10% for big operators, took it off. Everybody's the same, no matter if you got 200 bushel or 20,000, it's all the same. And that's the way it should have been to start out with. And I think we got all the leaks stopped in the seed plant so that it ain't leaking.
Have they hired any staff to assist with the bookkeeping kind of thing?
We work with Getzel and Creechy Company, professional accountants. We use them as our person.
As the auditor?
As the auditor and as the.
They do all the monthly bookkeeping?
That's what I said, like, that's what that is, at the bottom there. The board has tightened up, the money leaves the plant, all checks are double signed and stuff like that. I can have them come.
Who's the manager now?
Paul.
Is he not?
Yeah, he is.
Mr. Chairman, I do think that it's important that they come.
Yeah, no, they can come. Just set a date and I'll run it by Bob and we'll have to shut the plant down for come here, but yeah, we.
Probably be
Not a problem. There's.
busy season. After the busy season, I'm assuming.
That would be, hey, that would be preferable because we've been out looking for somebody to help them and no real response. Yeah.
Okay, Ernie has a question.
Gibson and Company, they only started this year. They weren't involved with the episode previously.
What was that, Ernie?
Gibson and Company, they were only involved this year. They weren't involved with the incident that had happened previously.
No.
Okay. No. Is there anything further on the sea cleaning report? It sounds like we'll try to set up.
Any other questions you can ask me afterwards if you want.
Okay, sounds fair enough.
I'll move it.
Do you want an invite to a board meeting or a committee of the whole meeting?
Or would you leave it till after we're done our busy season? Could we, or do you want to do it right away?
Details out, I guess. We can work those details out, right?
I think probably we'd like it to after this is busy, go hard times right now. Once they start seeding, it isn't actually that much because everything's pretty well cleared.
Right.
So you're suggesting summer?
Like May.
Probably.
Okay, no, that sounds
May
good.
meeting maybe. It's towards the end of May, could be good.
All in favor? Oh, I guess we need a motion. Oh, Dave moved it and all in favor?
Report.
Carried. Okay. The Brenda Knight's ASB report update. I think sure you've all read that. And just have.
I'll give you a motion to receive for information.
Okay, thank you. And the seminars. We've got a number of seminars coming up. March 6th, the dugout. Oh, all in favor of the provincial update and carried, sorry. The workshops coming up, we have a number. March 6th is the dugout workshop. March 12th is the farm estate planning. March 27th is the shelter belt workshop. April 15th is a shelter belt tree program closes. I guess that's when you need your applications for trees, Quentin. Okay. And April 15th is also the closing date for the ASB bursary applications. So I guess if the board can share that information, those you think that are interested. Yeah, it's good to see ASB so active in the workshops anyway. Okay, accept that for information. Paul? I will do so. All in favor? And carried. Moving on, we have nothing in camera. The next meeting is March 27th, 2024, 10 a.m.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Sorry, I looked up the last ASB meeting on YouTube and I couldn't find where anyone adjourned the meeting. It kind of looks like maybe we were in camera and we came out a little too early to get it recorded.
Get it recorded, yeah.
So for the minutes, I would suggest that the chair adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
For the last ones, and then just go forward. Just be careful when we come out of camera that we give the computers and staff enough time to catch up.
On it. Okay, yeah, makes good sense. So then, you still want to do that correction next month or not?
No, you can do it now. Yeah. Move the minutes now.
Thank you.
Okay, so before we adjourn, we'll correct the minutes.
I will also say that I was listening to the minutes during this as well. Mr. Nyberg, you popped in for the afternoon meeting, but not the morning meeting that day.
Oh, okay. So we'll move the adjournment by myself, the chair, because James wasn't at that meeting. And we'll need a mover for those minutes with the amendment.
I already made the motion.
So you'll make that? Yeah. Okay, all in favor of that? Okay, carried. We got that one cleared up.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
thanks, Yvette.
Now we'll do this one.
Okay, now,
Just note, Mr. Chairman, if we're going to run into a long meeting like this, we probably should start at 9 o'clock. Does anybody oppose to starting a little bit earlier? Or?
I am, this time of year, I will not be here.
and the thing is, this one, we had two delegations.
James, yeah, I'll do it.
I did, that's why I asked Larry. I get it. I 100%, I understand. I just,
Going for
you're going to have, yeah, no, I totally get it. We're in that position. I just, if it worked for people, it would make that opportunity.
And just on our agenda, we gotta adjust, if we got two delegations like that, leave them longer on agendas. It's the same as council.
I know.
And you get those delegations and it throws your agenda right off.
Especially when they were quite lengthy, so you can't rein them in. And I guess it was two things. We had two delegations and we have gone 2 months without meetings. So I can't foresee this being that long.
And just the only thing is that just because this meeting is run up against one that is, we
Have to
can't,
start on
you
time.
have to start on time. So.
I'll adjourn the meeting.
Dave made a motion to adjourn. All